we had the first television on the street. I used to come back every night and look at the top of the street and wait for that H aerial to go up, and now. Then one night it was there. My God, I sprinted down the street and we all switched on BBC television. And it was a black and white, I'm trying to remember what it was. It was a black and white show and it was magical. Prior to that, I did a lot of reading as a kid, but the usual popular stuff that kids would read. But I also did an inordinate amount of painting and drawing. And like my parents thought I was peculiar. They said, why don't you go out on Saturday night and drink? I said, no, I'm going to actually go out and painting. Okay. Okay. But I went to Germany in 1947 on a troop ship called the Empire Hallidale, standing with my gas mask. My parents in those days would say, you'll be all right. Dad's driver will meet you in Hamburg. And so I was somehow taken to Hull by an auntie, dropped on a ship, came off at Hamburg. And there's this guy, a Batman saying, over here. And we went to Hamburg. I lived in Hamburg and Frankfurt the next 4.5 years. I went to school in Wilhelmshaven, which is the U-boat barracks for the German Navy. And I was in there that was my fundamental education over those 4 years. But the key was in Frankfurt, in the American zone, there was my dad said, I'm going to show you the American way of life. He took my brother and I to an American PX. And in those days, it was boogie woogie and the soda fountains. And it was kind of really the American dream. Because it was magic, because I'd been on rationing and we'd lived off powdered egg and stuff like that. And my dad bought me I'll never forget the raspberry milkshake, packet of juicy fruit, and Coca-Cola. And I from that moment on, and the most important thing, there's a very nice cinema in the PX, and every Friday night we'd go and see everything out of Hollywood. What was the first movie you remember seeing as a boy that made an impression? My mum in the war years used to like to post she would go to the matinees in the afternoon, and I'd get taken along with my elder brother, Frank, who was 3 years older than I. And I'd be 5 or something at that point. Mum wanted to go and see this thing with Rita Hayworth, and at 5, I thought Rita Hayworth was pretty bloody impressive. Okay? And I get a funny feeling in the loins at 5 years old. It's not good. And when she started to tug the glove off and saying, put the blame on Mame, I looked at my brother and we all went funny. And your schooling was at Grangefield, right? Which today is in the lowest 20 percentile of schools in England. Was it better when you were going there? No, it was worse. I went to the place. I've had arguments here, with studio heads who said, "Don't you argue with me? I'm Harvard." And I said, "You're Harvard, dude. I'm Nelson Terrace Secondary Modern School." Fuck you. And I love saying Nelson Terrace Secondary Modern School. Can you imagine? That's in Stockton-on-Tees. You would not believe it. And we were being taught by teachers who hated us because they're all First World War survivors. Some had half a lung. Some were just angry about the job that they had in life. And so that's when caning was legal. And there was a battle between staff and kids and teachers. They hated us, we hated them. But that said, it was great fun. And you studied graphic art design, and then you went on to the Royal College of Art, yep. And you kind of transitioned into photography and what was sort of the beginning of a film program you helped start, I believe. Yeah. The Royal College didn't have a film school per se, but it was run by a marvelous man called George Haslam, who was one of the big designers when Teddington, anyone remember Teddington Lock? Teddington Lock was brilliant with Sidney Newman running Wednesday plays. Their play for today, they were great dramas with big sets in those days where they spent a lot of money. And I always wanted to get into Teddington. I never got in there, but it was, I got on the BBC instead. BBC was fine. But the most interesting, important facts here is that as I finished college, I said to him, "You've got a Bolex in the cupboard. Can I borrow the Bolex?" He said, "Only if you've got a script." So I said, "I can't." Okay. So I went out, I wrote a script, took him the Bolex, and he, just because I wrote the script, I think, he gave me the Bolex with a light meter and instruction book. So that was, I think...
that was like Boy and Bicycle?
Yeah. We'd make it by instruction book with the boy in it was my brother, Tony Scott. And we would, the Bolex and legs and in red car, Seton Crew, Middlesbrough, Jesus Christ. But it's a great location for I was in love with James Joyce at that point, and so there was an extremely pretentious voiceover. But it was pretty good film, and it's still at the BBC. It's still at the archives, and
it can be seen on YouTube, which I've done.
It looks great.
It does.
But it's done. Oh yeah, it's done with it. That's where I realized I had a real eye. If you can get you're born with an eye. If you're born with an eye, you're dead. If you're in this business, you're dead lucky. But I had a good eye, and so did Tony.
I felt watching it that it had it reminded me of Truffaut and 400 Blows.
Yeah.
Had you been exposed to the French New Wave?
I was way before Truffaut then, dude.
You were there? That's what I was thinking.
I think he saw that and did 400 Blows. I'd got a traveling scholarship, like a Fulbright, to America that year from Royal College. Hockney got one, I got one. So I know David quite well. And he said, "What are you going to do?" I said, "Well, I'm going to go to New York. I've got to go into the world of Mad Men." Hit Madison Avenue and Lexington Avenue at the time, but real high points of advertising in New York. And no, so I didn't. I took my job. BBC kept the job open for me for a year. Dick Levin said, "You got to come back now. I'm going to give it away." So I went back to BBC for 3 years as a designer.
An art director, right?
Yeah, but that's where I was straight in as a production designer, so I was really unpopular because I went straight in, and I was given to this guy, Foxy Abbott, who's great, who was this head of department, and said, "Design me a nightclub." So I designed a nightclub, and he went, "Christ." And so that was it. So I was off and running.
And you started Moonlighting, doing commercials.
That was the greatest. There's no...
And how did you know you wanted to do that, or it just seemed like an opportunity to practice the craft?
Money.
It's a good motivator, isn't it?
I did one commercial, and in that day, it was for Gerber's baby foods. And this little child said, "If you don't have it, I'll whack you." And they, at the end of the day, in cash in hand, doing Softly, after tax, I was getting £75 a week. Do you know what it's like doing hour TV live, where you got a 3-week turnaround right in the middle of the week, and a half in, you're given the next script, so you're not only casting, you're doing double shows all the time. And I thought, this is insane. And I was already on amphetamine, certainly to keep me going. And
you and Philip K. Dick had that in common.
Absolutely. And but I learned from that they gave me more money for that day than I was earning for a month at BBC. So I thought there's something seriously wrong here. And so I went into advertising for the next 20 years.
And you started your RSA Associates company.
26.
At 26, and your first associate was your brother Tony.
Yeah, he did the two best films I've ever seen any student ever do. If you can never get them, one is called One of the Missing, and the other one is called In Loving Memory.
One of the Missing is from an Ambrose Bierce story,
yes.
You were saying. And was the him having done a public domain story from Ambrose Bierce, is that what got you started looking at Jack London and Henry James and ultimately Joseph Conrad for The Dualist?
Yeah, I mean, we then, years of television advertising thereafter, it wasn't until I was 35 I suddenly realized I'm never going to make a movie, I better get on with it. And we're doing so well that I can pay for a writer and pay for my own screenplay and be my own completion bond. So I we had a guy start a Scott Free Productions with Tony, and I said, this is a great name. It was Tony's name. This company said, this is a fantastic name. Why don't we turn it into the film company? And then we had one person working for us who dug out, the first film would be with Technisonor in Paris, with Claude Chabrol partnering us. And we had to come with an English classic story, so we came up with a story of Beltrafio. And because I'm overtly fair, I said to him, okay, let's spin up. I can't believe this, I'm doing this. And he won. I couldn't believe it. So he did the film first. I was so pissed off, I couldn't believe it. He ruined my summer. But he did if you ever get Sorry Beltrafio, it's with the very first Doctor Who. I forget his name now, but he did a good job. So Tony did that, and I think, God damn. And then I would be next up with the Dualists.
And you ended up working with David Putnam as a producer on that.
Yes, I couldn't get it going. I'd got it written. Went to Hallmark Hall of Fame, funny enough, in Chicago, and they said, this is a fantastic script. But I'm flying myself around, by the way. I'm doing all this myself. But to get a film going, I lost 2 years of work. I never worked. And the company was going, so I already had directors working, so that was good forethought. And I'm now on the road trying to sell myself. I ended up at Hallmark, who said, now, great film, great subject, great script, not for us, it's too expensive, because it was $800,000 all in. And so I went back to London, thought, I got to do this. So I never knew Putnam at that point, but I knew him. He knew Alan Parker well, and Adrian Lyne. Parker had already done his Bugsy, and Adrian had already done Foxes, so I was almost ready to commit suicide. I was like going crazy. And so I called up David, and David read it and went, I say, this is a pretty good script. And so from there, cut long story short, we got it going.
Now, in talking about the Dualist, you've said that you liked, with the main actors, Keith Carradine and Harvey Keitel, just throwing them into it. You didn't like rehearsing. You wanted to see them be real and spontaneous. I wonder how you look back on that. How you look back on that experience, and how your working with actors has evolved over the years. I
always make buddies of actors. I was in a Prada last week getting, a tux. And I look up in the balcony, and there's Harvey standing there getting a tux. He's looking down at me, and I said, Harvey, great film. What film? Young. He goes, oh, Youth. I went, yeah, great film. And he said, why don't you give me work, you son of a bitch? And that was it. And he just walked around, and that was it. It was like, fuck you, Harvey. And then first time I met Harvey, he's come in from, I'm now told by these, I meet two high powers on the beach in Cannes. And I think they're having egg and chips, can you believe it, on the Croisette. And so I remember these details, it's real. And I'm looking at the egg and chips, and this guy's saying, well, and I'd cast two people. These are stories out of school here, so you can't tell anybody. I'd cast Michael York, God bless him, and Oliver Reed. And Ollie Reed was going to be the good guy. Michael York was going to be the bad guy. Always cast him against type. York is a great swordsman, you know that?
Yeah.
And Reed is a dangerous and very great swordsman. And they're both great with all that stuff. And I always remember that Michael York was wonderful in Zeffirelli's Romeo and Juliet, where he was playing the bad guy. He was special. At that moment in time, they didn't mean financially anything, even though all I'm doing is raising $800,000. And which means I don't get paid, by the way. And I'm also going to end up being in the completion bond. So he said, you got to I'm going to write 3 names on here. So I wrote 3 names down the back of the menu. And the first 2 was Harvey Keitel and Keith Carradine. Harvey will be furious that that's how I thought of him. But doesn't matter. And so I was told, off you go then. So I then went back to London, got a ticket, flew to Hollywood. Today, you guys said, I want to make a movie. you can get a bloody digital camera, got your friends together, make a bloody movie this weekend. This is really hard work doing it this way. You've got instant, you don't have to edit, you've got instant image. There is no fucking excuse. It's raining for 58 days and I'm the Bond, so we do not actually stop. Everyone's drenched. And you know, what people don't realize is that rain is very beautiful for the skin and the pictorial quality is fantastic. And because I'm, by then, a couple of thousand commercials, I'm using this with the Bond, saying, yeah, you know, it's really tough, but actually it's incredible. And these spherical lenses, I'm using a guy called Frank Tidy, and the rushes are spectacular. And cut it together, Terry Rollins, and we come to Hollywood with a cut. And I call up Paramount and say, Ridley Scott here, and they say, yeah, excuse me, what do you want? I said, I've got a cut here of a film that we've done for you. Oh, really? Oh, while I'm in France, I said, Dave, doesn't anyone ever come? He said, that's unusual, but normally they come once. And he said, in this instance, they haven't come at all. So nobody comes. And so I think, maybe, is that a good sign or a bad sign? And then the woman said, come back in and said, excuse me, what's the film called? I said, The Dualist. She said, Dualist goes away here, clip, come back in. Then they said, can you come in this afternoon? They'd forgotten. And, you know, had Harvey Weinstein been in business in those days, he would have known what to do. But to be fair to a studio, you look at a film like The Duelist and, you know, there's different kinds of movies out there. They didn't know what to do with it. So we made 7 prints in the United States.
But it made a splash at Cannes. And
got a prize at Cannes.
People saw it, and it got rave reviews from people who could tell that, you know, you had used the environment really as a character in a movie. And in doing Alien, one of the things that I think it had such a kind of a dreamlike quality to it in many ways. Mm-hmm. Were you had already found, I guess, H.R. Geiger at that point as someone who you wanted to work with?
Well, the studio weren't sure about it because they thought it was obscene, and I said, well, obscene's good. But because his book Necronomicon had it in there, said, that's the alien, that's it. And they said, I said, that's it. You know, if we can make that I've never seen anything like that. So then I flew to Switzerland, met Geiger. He didn't want to come because he didn't fly. So we put him on a train, brought him in, and he stayed in Shepperton for almost 10 months. And he was a great, reliable, creative power source. But he worked in secrecy. We gave him one very small studio, like 10,000 square foot studio. We made it very private. He was in there with Mia, his wife and agent, and one person helping. Peter Voisey was a great sculptor. So Voisey helped him a lot on sculpting this stuff. And Peter Voisey fundamentally made what I call the famous croissant, the spaceship, which is fantastic. That was Voisey. And it was a good relationship with Giger. It was marvelous.
And the cavern sequence with the eggs is something I always remember. What was the origins of that for you from a visual point of view?
Nothing really. I mean, I think we had 2 departments running. I knew that logically I'd have one brain designer for the Alien and the Alien universe. That would be Giger. So Giger did drawings of the interior of the corridors, the landscape, all the evolutions of the alien himself. Then the other side of it would be Michael Seymour, production designer, doing the Nostromo and all the elements involved in the Nostromo. And I used a guy called Jean-Giraud Mobius, who designed my spacesuits. John, very good wardrobe designer called John, my God, I've forgotten his name, did all the rest of the uniforms. John Muller. Yeah, he was very, very good. So he did all the rest, and the drawings for the space, the cost of the space suits were by Jean-Giraud Mobius. So I had 3 different brains on it, and it was very interesting. And John and Michael Seymour had 2 great art directors, one called Roger Christian, and one called Les Dilly. And Les looked after all the alien stuff, which is very tricky. From a drawing to that, it could easily look like a very bad coffee bar in Soho in 1951. And so that was incredible, including the space jockey, the corridor itself. There was wonderfully Z-brighted, and anybody knows what Z-bright is. It's the final polish on the wall, so you lose that fakey, fairgroundy look. It looked fantastic. And Roger, we were always arguing about not so much the money, because it was all done for, at that point, 8.4. I think it went, 8.6. And Roger, I said, I want this and that and that and that. And we said we couldn't afford it because it had to be molded and we couldn't have the money for molding. So we went off and we bought a Canberra bomber and dismantled it from a graveyard. And from that, Roger fundamentally said, sculpt me 2 meters of this corridor, 2 meters of that corridor. Because the bombers have repetition. So you just stick them up, tack them up, it's sculptural, spray it white, and by God, it looks like it works. That's what it was.
You're now preparing to do another Alien film. I guess it's in line with the Prometheus story part of it.
Sequel.
Tell us a little bit about how differently, with that time gap, what is it now, almost a 40-year time gap between the two movies, right?
Well, the Alien was a great franchise, and
you didn't do any of the others.
They never asked. I thought, welcome to Hollywood. And that was the first lesson, here ended the first lesson. I didn't even know it was happening until I found out. So I think that would have been too expensive, that's why I wasn't asked. And because by then I'd done Blade Runner and da-da-da. And I bear no malice. I was pissed for a bit, though, I'll tell you. And but Jim did a great job. Now, I think gradually, one way, it's a hard act to follow. That first Alien was good, special, because of the beast himself. The cast was fantastic. Without Alien, you wouldn't have had the same kind of movie. It's I was going to say it's a monster. It was a beautiful monster, and catatonic when you use it. Was like scary as hell.
And in terms of the new one, in terms of how you would prepare, you're getting kind of another shot at preparing.
Well, no, I think they used it up, and they know that. And when you do Alien vs. Predator, you can't do that. Come on. And so I don't care. I mean, really, I say it as it is. That's silly. And so I think they put it away, and I thought, there's a way out of this. We could go back and prequel the whole idea, because no one asked the bloody question, why would you make such a beautiful, perfect monstrous creature, and for what reason? And I always figured it was in the hold of a ship, so that craft was always like a battle wagon for me, carrying bacteriological, biomechanoid monsters that could be put down anywhere that they wanted to be cleaned out and cleaned up.
Like a weapon of mass destruction.
It's a weapon of mass destruction. And that was, and I just eventually went quiet and that didn't mention it because no one was doing it. And so I came back, and that's why Prometheus was cooked up pretty well, I thought. And we've reignited the thing. We did well enough, did very well, to now go to the next one. So the next one is who made it and why. And I'm not going to tell you who. And why will be explained.
And in terms of how you plan a movie, in terms of pre-visualization, tell us how you're going to do that from a technical point of view. Still with your kinds of storyboards?
Yeah, I mean, there's some pretty good storyboard artists out there, some very good ones, actually. But to me, by the time I've explained to a storyboard artist what I want, I may as well have done it myself. And because...
What about the previs tools that are available digitally now?
Oh, you do that anyway. You have to. You don't have to, but you should. Because I can really draw. So the drawing linked with the eye means I can literally previs a whole film. And I'll, as I'm reading, I'm seeing it. I'm even getting a taste of set and place and environment. And so it's not stick figures. It's like close-ups, medium shots, wide. And I'm already guessing what I want. So I can draw that pretty quick, fast. But a storyboard for Black Hawk Down is like this. But you do a little bit each day. It's a bit like getting writer's block on a typewriter. Do you use a typewriter? Anybody use a typewriter still? I kind of like that. You do that, and I'm blocked in the scene, and I've just come from the previous scene visually, and I always operate everything. I was always a camera operator right through Dualist, Alien. I wasn't allowed to in Blade Runner. I was not allowed to because I was in Hollywood, but I got a great cameraman and a good crew. And then back, so operating and visualizing is very important, and so I always bought everything.
And when we come now to Blade Runner, can you talk a little bit about how you decided to create kind of film noir out of the text, out of Do Androids Dream of Electric Sheep?
Philip has always got 95 storylines in the first 4 chapters. So what you've got to then do is wade through and say, well, which story do I want to tell? And to try and get through a Do Androids Dream of Electric Sheep is a massive wealth of information, many stories and styles and universes put together. And it's easy for the author because he was like that, and so once the writer, Hampton Fancher, had distilled what he thought was a good idea, which was there's a hunter and the hunted, and the hunter falls in love with the quarry. That's it. And it was in an apartment, that said, really beautifully written. And I'd been offered it when I was mixing Alien, and I didn't really want to do that. I didn't want to go back on science fiction again, I said. And a year and a half later, I hadn't worked. That was another learning curve. Make a decision, get on with it, don't ponder. And I went back to Michael Dealey and said, I'd love to meet Hampton and let's talk about it. So I turned up, and I spent more time with Hampton Fancher than I've ever done with any writer in my career. I loved him, but he was such a great, marvelous mind. And we sit there day after day for 5 months, kind of not rejigging, but growing the script. Because I said, what's interesting about the story, it's terrific, but she's a robot. We can't call her a robot. And they've got toy snakes in there. I don't get that. I don't understand it. And when he goes outside, I want to see what the world's like. So that's how it evolved. So suddenly we were on the street, and suddenly, what does the street look like? And so the whole thing evolved to Terrell and the whole thing. That's why when the author, I showed him the shots of the opening shot of the city to Vangelis. I think he nearly died. And then I showed him the shots of the pyramid, and he flipped.
And you're revisiting him not only with Man in the High Castle, which we should maybe take a moment and talk about now, but also with I'm not sure if it's a prequel or sequel to Blade Runner that Denis Villeneuve is undertaking. Oh, well, I've been working on that script for almost 2.5 years. And I'd planned to do it myself. And so I worked with Hampton, who fundamentally found him. I think he was hiding in New York, and he said, "Oh, no, not again." I said, "Yeah, I think I got an idea." "Oh, no." And so he came in, and he said, "That makes sense." I said, "Yeah. It's very relevant to the very first one. I'm not going to tell you because you've got to go and pay and see the movie. But it's very relevant, and it all makes sense with the overall concept and scheme of things." And it's a very obvious thing when you think about it. And that was the big nut. And he went, "Yeah." So then we started on that. We spent, I think, another 2 or 3 weeks together. And then Hampton went away and said, "I'm going to not write a script, I'm going to write a little novella." So he went away and came back with 110 pages, which was very nice. I said, "That's it. I don't want to do it anymore." And then from that, I found Michael Green, and had a very good time with Michael for almost a year, on and off. And we came up with what I think is a very good screenplay. And is it about to start?
It'll be shooting by July. And Harrison's in it, and I met with Harrison, talked to him about it, and the other guy. I think it's going to be pretty good film.
Now, when you made Blade Runner, it's hard for anyone to be told today that it was not a success when it came out, either critically or at the box office.
It starts with MTV. I always remember the beginning of MTV was Pete Townsend said, "Evening, everybody, this is MTV." And then I noticed in MTV early days the videos that were done by it's a great breeding ground for directors. I thought David Fincher, amongst others. And because they were films, they were little films where they weren't performance. Of course, the performance video is good, but it's great when you see the bands engaged in almost the films of this filming the story. And I used to sit watching it because I would be looking for new directors, thinking, wow, who did that? Kind of influence. I think, wow, that's pretty good. And I started to realize that, wait a minute, there's the Rushes of Blade Runner here. How the hell did they get them? And I suddenly realized that everything was rainy and grungy. And I suddenly realized that we invented grunge, rainy, grungy, sexy, smoky stuff.
And you were onto climate change pretty early, too.
Yeah.
Because Los Angeles is very rainy in Blade Runner, isn't it?
Yep. But when you start off and saying, opening credits going to say San Angeles, and somebody said, duh, what does that mean? I said, rainy? Well, San Francisco and its suburb joined Los Angeles. San Angeles, that was it. And they said, no, that'll never happen. Seriously. So you start with that. And because I was a new kid on the block in Hollywood at that point, I was then 42. I'd done, all that body of work, and then The Dualist and then Alien. It gets annoying when you get asked questions which are fundamental, And I did manage to keep my temper most of the time.
Now, you've said that in working with Harrison Ford on that, there were bumps in the road.
Harry, no, he's a great guy. He's fun. He is fun.
You've said that the way you worked with him, you learned from it for future experiences in terms of working with actors. And I'm wondering if you could tell us a little bit about.
Yeah, I never had a problem. I never thought I ever had a problem with actors because to get that far in 3 films, pretty bloody good actually.
Yeah.
If I didn't know nothing about actors, then there's something happening, something working, and Harrison. I think the hard thing about the film was it's such a unique vision at the time. I can't describe to him directorially. It's come in large, very nice man called Larry Paul, but the key and Larry built it all. But Larry was great and generous enough to realize that I brought in Sid Mead. I said, Sid, come and help me. So Sid and I walked around the backlot, photographed the backlot, and fundamentally you have the beginning of retro architecture. And then Larry did it very, very well. So that was all a learning curve. To explain that to the actor for what would come out as the cadence of what he's going to do is tricky, because in a funny kind of way, we're doing more than Philip K. Well, Philip K. Dick, in essence, is the great detective writer from Miami.
Raymond Chandler, you mean?
Yeah, it's Raymond Chandler. And so
it's Marlowe in a way.
It's Marlowe, Raymond Chandler, and that's why I always wanted the voiceover in there, because I thought on Apocalypse Now, the voiceover was absolutely the fourth dimension of the movie. And because they'd made Marty an absolute ice-cold, what he was, which is a employed surgical man who will kill. And have you ever seen the long cut of that? But a lot of it shows the more human side of him. The cut that goes out is by far the best because it removes all that stuff.
I agree. I
with
prefer
prostitution. I don't want to see that. I just want to see a guy who's waiting for a job, and that was fantastic. And therefore, his human side was his voice. And with the marvelous dialogue and the stuff we first ever heard that dialogue, which I don't think it was Francis. I think that was the
Michael
guy.
Hare who wrote Dispatches wrote the narration.
Yeah,
which is beautiful.
Beautiful. So in a way, that's why Apocalypse is poetic. It's a poetic metaphor, right? And a funny kind of way, Blade Runner was evolving in the same way. You don't know that at the time. You don't design that. But I wanted the voiceover, Harrison has got this beautiful voice, great voice, and Hampton has got a great turn of phraseology and internalization, but we couldn't get the words. And Harrison wasn't comfortable. I don't think our writer was that comfortable, but I went with it anyway to try and make it work, and it felt a little bit clunky, a little ploddy. But there's some people who prefer that version. So the version that I finally put out, the so-called director's cut later, was no voiceover and take off that silly ending where they fly. If you're going to go into the hills in a car like that, in beautiful mountain scenery, why are you living in that bloody city, you know? You want to hear a story about how I got the mountain scenery?
Sure.
Okay. So I've previewed, and the preview is like, they don't get it, idiots. You know, you've got to know who you are. And at that moment, you've got to know, you've got to have made your decision about what you think it is. Because what happened to me after Blade Runner, I vowed never to ever read critique again, good, bad, or indifferent, and I don't. Because I was destroyed, and at the end of it, I thought, you know what, fuck you, because I think it's a special movie. So they said, can we have a more happy ending? I said, no, it's a film noir. What's a film noir? From that moment, you know you're in trouble. And it should end on him looking at the thing, nodding in assent, knowing that he is a bloody replicant, going in the elevator and joining Nexus 6 with Nexus 7.
Because almost knows something from his mind that no one else would know.
Yeah, it tracks all the way back. I thought, got a preview again, so I called up Stanley. So I called up Stanley saying, listen, you've just finished The Shining. Yeah. I know you must have shot for 7 years doing that helicopter footage in Montana, and you were never there, were you? Because you hate flying. Right. Can I borrow some helicopter footage for the preview? Yeah. So the following morning I had 17 hours of helicopter footage. and then he called, and I was looking at it, and it's spherical. He said, oh, what do you shoot? I said, Panavision. Oh, anamorphic. Yeah, he said, it's not going to work. This is Stanley. What's the car? I said, it's a spinner. I think I sent him a little thing. He said, it's perfect, because the Volkswagen every shot. And if you project my spherical anamorphic, it'll be long. How perfect. It should all work. Rang off. 20 minutes later, he said, by the way, if you use any of the shots that I've used, you can't have them. And that was it. And I ran it, and it went on the film.
That was lovely. You and he were friends by that time.
No, I never met him.
Really?
I just used to talk to him. He called me up first time and said, how did that guy come out of the chest? And I said, who's this, Stanley? Oh, hi. And I said, well, you want to explain the thing on the table? He's underneath and I get it, but I can't find the cut. So I said, but there it is. And the last time I talked to him, he said we should have dinner or something, then he died.